Oh, and we are live. Nick is supposed to ask me this question, and I'm supposed to respond, and then he's going to want to play the jingle, right? That's my understanding, Nick, and please correct me if I'm wrong. So if I read the show notes, are you going to ask me that question?
Well, the question I want to ask, because I can hear children playing in the background, is would you allow your children to leave the house naked, Alistair?
If they were 3 years old and we were going to run around outside, for sure, rip the diapers off. Not that they would be wearing diapers at 3, but they're 16. So no, childcare services, I'd lose my
That's
kids.
an uncomfortable age for diapers, I'm just saying.
Well, I don't understand. Why are you asking me about my kids and diapers?
Well, I really want to roll the jingle. Can I roll the jingle?
Roll the ringle.
I'm going to roll the jingle.
Roll the jingle.
Roll the jingle.
What a great
Did that
jingle.
just buffer?
Nice.
Did it buffer? Because it buffered on my side.
No.
Do it fine for you?
It was great. I loved it.
Yeah, and it was an awesome jingle. It's free luck.
Well, welcome to SCI Fridays, your portal into security, compliance, identity, and you. If you're new to the channel, we talk about all things. Do we talk about all things? We talk about things that get us excited, scared, dismayed, but mostly excited about cloud security and governance. That's why we're here, I think. Nick, is that right? Are we here for that?
Well, we're here for mostly that. And personally, I'm here for the snacks, but there are no snacks. So I guess what we are going to do today is talk to Matthew Levy, just to make sure that we get the pronunciation of his name right. It's not Levy, it's Levy. Matthew Levy, welcome to today's show.
Thanks, Nick and Alistair. Yeah. It's a pleasure.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are?
I thought you were going to introduce me with a nice big, introduction, but it's fine.
Right.
I'll introduce myself. So I am a solutions architect at MB Consult, but I'm also an enterprise mobility MVP. And that means I deal with things that are identity, security, compliance related stuff.
So on the theme of today's show and nakedness, I'm equating nakedness to legacy authentication. Alistair, I think that's quite serious, don't you think?
Look, thanks, Matthew Levy, and I apologize for Nick not introducing you as well as I would if it was written next to my name on the show notes, which it wasn't, and it was Nick supposed to intro to Matt. You were supposed to say those things. He didn't. I apologize. Bad Nick. Legacy auth. Do people actually care about legacy auth, right? We talked about kids running around naked in the road, and we generally don't care. Why did you update the show notes, Nick? You literally copy-pasted something into the show notes. Why do you do that during a live broadcast? Who did that?
That was Matt.
This is a live broadcast, and you... This is why
you got to roll with it, or I'm going to do the jingle again.
No, we should not prepare. You can't half prepare and then not prepare and then copy paste things into the OneNote and just destroy everything. Anyhow, coming back to not allowing your kids to run around naked. That was the theme of the show, and we would never do that unless we had a beach and our children are under 3 years old. So why would you allow your tenant to parade around naked on the public internet? And we believe the nakedness of your tenant is directly proportional to the amount of legacy authentication you have in your tenant, right? Is that what we're saying? And because we started having this conversation, we had to get the definitive authority, the defined definitive authority in all things end user computing, because this is what Matthew Levy worries about every day of his life when he's dealing with customers. We thought, well, let's have a conversation with Matt about all things legacy auth. Matt, I think at the beginning, because most people who have spun up an Office 365 tenant would not necessarily think about legacy authentication, but it is there. right? So what is
Yeah.
legacy authentication? I think is the
Right.
big one here. Let's set the tone. Let's define the beginning of everything.
Sure. So legacy auth is essentially authenticating with two simple things, a username and a password, and that's it. It's basic. There's no fancy pins or fingerprints and other things to authenticate. You can't do multiple forms of authentication. It's just username and password. And we all know that passwords don't mean anything today because your passwords are hackable, crackable, out there on breaches.
That's right.
And so, admins make people set ridiculous passwords. So they write them down on sticky notes. And so that's not my password, by the way. But so essentially passwords are weak and they don't protect anything. So if you're only using basic authentication, that service is hackable. It's naked, essentially.
Naked.
So what you're saying is that there are certain applications that use legacy authentication, right? And for the most part, when we talk about legacy authentication in the Office 365 space, we are referring to Microsoft applications that would consume or utilize legacy authentication. And it's particularly it's stuck onto that thing that Nick likes to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Exchange, right?
Exchange, that's right.
Exchange. So legacy auth sits on top of tools, the applications inside of Microsoft 365 is typically Exchange. And if we're not using legacy auth, what would we then use instead of legacy auth, or what's available to us today?
Well, we want to be using modern auth because modern auth supports things like multi-factor authentication, right? So I'm sure you've all seen multi-factor authentication. You use multi-factor authentication all the time, where you enter your username and your password, and you have to tap the number that's displayed on your phone, or you have to give a biometric to authenticate some more. So it's another level of authentication. You can't do that with basic or legacy auth. Modern auth is the only auth protocol that supports that. And we're getting into the weeds here, but there's different authentication protocols, but they need to support modern formats.
And modern would be stuff like OpenID and a few other things around Auth-O and OAuth, whichever way you want to. Well, I've got a T-shirt that says Auth-O.
It's wrong.
Is that the company that created OAuth?
OAuth is a standard.
I will wear the T-shirt tomorrow, and it says
can't wear inaccurate T-shirts. It's not allowed.
I can't wear a T-shirt tomorrow either, though, because we have important.
You're going to be naked.
Correct. Now, naturally, there are applications that require or use legacy authentication, right? And without it, it's not like you can do that like in Marvel. What is it, DC Marvel, where you snap your fingers and half the population disappears? I suppose is that gargantuan where to switch off legacy auth also requires Thanos?
Well, the thing is, Microsoft is saying deploy or create a conditional access policy in Azure Active Directory that blocks legacy auth.
But that's new, right?
Well, it's not very new. I mean, it's been around for a while that you can create a conditional access policy. The problem is the conditional access policy on its own does not get rid of legacy auth. So there's two bits to it. There's the legacy protocols still being there and listening and doing stuff. And then there's the conditional access policy that you could have to block legacy auth. And just blocking with a conditional access policy still leaves those protocols open and vulnerable to other types of attacks, password spray attacks and GEL dumps.
So stop the bus, because
that's quite alarming.
What's stopping the bus?
No, well, you should stop the bus because, well, children are clothed at this stage, but I'm paying for conditional access. And
but hold on,
telling me is I'm still exposed.
No, just stop the bus. Why do we need to use conditional access policies to switch off legacy authentication in my tenant? I mean, there's a thing that says enable modern auth, and if you go into it, or if you switch on security defaults, only modern auth works, right? It disables everything in the Office 365 admin center that says settings, org settings, modern auth, enable, and then you can select what you actually want legacy auth to do. I mean, that's my understanding. And then you people come in with, I want to sell you conditional access.
Well, no, so this is the thing. Microsoft's messaging is do conditional access policies, protect yourselves, block legacy auth. And people go and they create conditional access policies, which is great. And they've got MFA, which is great. But they haven't gone and switched off legacy auth, which is what you're talking about, Alistair, in the tenant.
My logic, but
enable
logic,
modern
right?
auth. Perhaps, but not to everybody. And I've seen it. I've seen lots of customers that have got conditional access policies to block legacy auth, and they've got MFA, but the legacy auth doesn't get to MFA. It doesn't even get to conditional access policies because it's using a legacy. Right? It's the legacy protocols.
You can bypass MFA by using legacy auth.
Exactly. So you have to go and switch off those protocols. So the protocols that we often talk about in Exchange Online are SMTP, POP3, IMAP, EWS, ActiveSync, Mobile Sync. Yeah.
Is it Mobile Active Sync? Well, I don't know. It ends in sync, right?
Yes.
I'm not the Exchange person. We were hoping that Nick would add value here.
It's okay. I'm letting you ramble. I'm allowing you to expose yourself and the ignorance you have around Exchange. It's okay. This is a safe space. Except for the really
to be fair, Microsoft are going to be switching off legacy auth in Exchange Online in the very near future. They've been doing a lot of work. The problem is there are a lot of customers that are still using legacy auth, and if they just switched it off, stuff would break. And so you need to be careful about going and switching it off. So your kids may not be completely naked because you've got conditional access policies, but they might still be exposed. You haven't put sunblock on them and you're sending them out into the harsh South African sun. What you need to do is both clothe them and put a sun hat on and smear them with sunblock.
This analogy is out there, right? It's like seriously out there.
It's factor conditional access.
What's the level? The SPF. SPF. Where's the SPF, right?
It's SPF conditional access. That's what it is.
So this is great because we will rate everything that we need to do at a difficulty level based on the SPF, right? That's how we rate. And that's now a new thing for the show where our difficulty rating is based on how bad you can burn, right? I love that. That works.
Right.
So in closing, Matt, for customers that are moving to Office 365 or already in Office 365 and they're worried about security issues, legacy auth being a prime factor, what are your top tips for switching or for getting rid of legacy authentication inside of your tenant?
First of all, understand if legacy auth is in use by your users, their ActiveSync devices, and you can see that in the sign-in logs in Azure Active Directory. So first establish how much it's being used, then make a plan to go and switch that stuff off. And by knowing who's using it, you'll know what impact that will have. So you need to plan it and then go and switch it off and have MFA. If you don't have MFA today, then I don't even know why we're speaking to you. But you should have MFA enabled and then have conditional access policies that only do stuff on modern auth, and basic legacy auth is gone. That's what you should be
hold on. My question then, if I switch on modern auth and switch off legacy auth, why do I need conditional access policies?
You don't necessarily, but the conditional access policies will add additional things that granularity, essentially.
So if you don't have a plan that supports conditional access policies, what you should actually do is either go switch it off manually. And if it's a granular approach, you could say, well, we only use SMTP. We can start disabling IMAP and POP. And or we only use IMAP. In theory, they should only be using IMAP. So we use IMAP. We've got 2 apps that use IMAP, so we still need that. We can switch off POP and SMTP because we can do that granularly. And we are going to switch off Exchange Active Sync, right? The mobile sync that I was referring to. So you can approach it granularly. You don't have to go, well, I'm switching off all legacy auth and whatever applications we're using, it's now no longer, it's not a thing. And you can disable the clients that you're using like Thunderbird and all those other things. And then switch on MFA or just hit the slider that says security defaults on.
Defaults, yeah.
And you'll get all of that without having to worry about a P1 license for conditional access.
Right. Yeah, because the security defaults give you other things, right? So
there's
4 policies that it gives you.
What does it give you? It gives you MFA. It gives you a condition. Well, it gives you and on that bombshell, next week, catch us to talk to us about what security defaults actually gives you, because we're at 15 minutes. Is that how we end, Nick? I don't understand.
We're going to end really soon, except Matt, it's Friday afternoon. People need a blog post. Can we get a blog post soon?
Yes. Yeah. So I have an upcoming blog post that should be ready very soon. It's sort of in the oven around this legacy auth and actually switching it off. And just, look out for the information from Microsoft on their disabling or switching off.
I actually have an article talking about security defaults and when to switch off security defaults at Practical 365, which actually covers these things. Sorry, Nick, I don't think I told you about it.
I remember the days when you still told me things. And on that note, I'm going to end the show and push another button, and then everyone
Hold on, you can't end the show like that. Well, thanks everyone for sticking around and watching us. If you like us, please hit the subscribe button. Also hit the like button because that changes the YouTube
There
algorithm.
is no like and subscribe button.
But we're archiving to link to YouTube. That's
yes,
what
if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact and it's no longer live, then please remember to like and subscribe.
All right. You can find us on the interwebs. I am at Alistair Pugin.
I am at Nicolas Blank.
And I am at Scrods.
That sounds like I'm not wearing any rods. That's my naked security. Yeah.
Naked.
So if you do find us, please shake our hands so that we can kiss babies, take selfies with the crowd, because that's what Nick once said. And thank you very much. Catch you next week. Ciao, ciao.
Cool.
Roll the jingle.
I love it when I get to roll the jingle.